Did the hospital send the confirmation for my surgery? I asked quietly, trying to keep my voice steady as we sat around the polished oak table. My mom didn't even look up from serving mashed potatoes. They did, she said casually. But we had to use that money for your brother's birthday. He only turns 21 once, you know. My fork stopped midair. You used my surgery money? Dad chimed in, chuckling. You'll be fine, Evelyn. You always make such a big deal out of everything. Your brother barely gets any attention. Let him have his moment. Across the table, Ethan grinned smugly, flashing the new designer watch gleaming on his wrist. Thanks for funding my birthday, sis, he said, half joking but fully proud. The room went silent except for the faint clinking of cutlery. I placed my fork down carefully, my heart thudding like thunder under the calm surface of my voice. So, I said softly, I guess you still don't know who really needs the surgery. Dad frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Mom's smile faltered. Evelyn, stop being dramatic. I looked at each of them slowly, one by one. My brother's arrogant smirk, my father's dismissive eyes, my mother's cold indifference, and then I smiled. Don't worry, I said. You'll find out soon enough. For the first time in years, they looked uneasy. That night, as I packed a single suitcase, I decided they wouldn't get another chance to spend my life like it was disposable. And the real surgery? It wasn't for my body anymore, it was for my freedom. The next morning, I drove to the hospital myself, the same one my parents were supposed to handle everything with. The receptionist, a kind woman named Hannah, looked up my file. Your surgery was fully approved, Ms. Reeves, she said. But your guardian canceled it 2 weeks ago. Claimed it wasn't medically necessary. I froze. Guardian? I was 24. They didn't have that power anymore. Hannah frowned at her screen. Wait, someone submitted an old authorization form under your father's name. That's highly irregular. I exhaled slowly. Can I get a copy of that form? Within minutes, I was holding the evidence, my father's signature, forged beside mine. The ink was shaky, but not enough to draw suspicion. My hands trembled, but my voice was steady when I said, "Thank you." Outside in the parking lot, the sun felt different, not warm, but clarifying. I drove straight to my lawyer's office. Mr. Lane had handled my insurance paperwork before. When he saw the document, his expression darkened. This is fraud, Evelyn. Not just morally wrong, legally punishable. Good, I said quietly. Then we'll handle it legally. That evening, I emailed my parents the scanned copy of the forged signature, attaching the message. I think you should know what the hospital found today. I'll let you decide whether you want to fix it yourselves or let someone else fix it for you. By midnight, my phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls. Apologies. Excuses. I didn't answer a single one. The real surgery was scheduled for next week, funded by a private foundation that didn't steal from me. And soon, I'd show my family what healing really looked like. A week after my surgery, I received a message in our family group chat, the same one they used to brag about Ethan's parties. Mom, Sunday dinner at 7. Family only. Let's talk. I stared at it for a long moment. Maybe they thought a single dinner could undo years of betrayal. Still, curiosity won. I showed up. The house was spotless, candles lit, like they were preparing for a guest who mattered. Dad smiled stiffly. Evelyn, you look good. Recovery suits you, Mom added, her voice too sweet to be real. Ethan, sitting across the table, avoided my eyes. Probably embarrassed. Probably still trying to figure out how I'd paid for everything on my own. Dinner started quiet, until Dad cleared his throat. Your mother and I made a mistake. We thought we were doing what was best for everyone. You used my medical fund for a birthday watch, I said calmly. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Mom shifted uncomfortably. We were under pressure. Ethan needed validation. I interrupted. I hope that watch keeps his heart ticking, because mine almost didn't. Ethan looked up sharply. Eve, come on. I leaned back, folding my hands. I didn't come here for an apology. I came here to return something. I placed a sealed envelope on the table. Their eyes followed it nervously. What's that? Dad asked. The beginning of accountability, I said softly. They didn't know yet inside were legal notices. fraud investigation, forgery report, hospital correspondence, and a single note that read, "This is what healing costs when you try to steal it." 3 days later, I was sitting in my office, the same firm where I'd built my career in medical administration, when my assistant buzzed in. "Evelyn, your parents are here. They said it's urgent." I smiled faintly. Perfect timing. They entered, faces pale, eyes darting around the marble-floored room like they didn't belong there. "Eve," Dad began, "the hospital called. They said someone reported us for document tampering. You wouldn't." I leaned back in my chair. "I didn't report you. The system did. The hospital's audit flagged the forgery automatically." Mom's voice cracked. "They said we could face charges. How could you do this to your family?" "Family?" I repeated softly. "You used that word while spending my surgery fund on a watch. You risked my life for a party." Ethan muttered, "It was just money, Eve." I stood, sliding a stack of documents across the table, certified copies from the hospital, the insurance company, and my lawyer. "This is a record of everything you signed in my name. It's also what I sent to the board this morning. They'll decide whether you keep your positions in the hospital trust." Dad's face drained of color. "You wouldn't ruin your own family for this." I looked at him calmly. "You already did. I'm just finishing what you started." The door opened then. My company's legal counsel entered with a folder. "Ms. Reeves, the press statement's ready for your approval." My mother's lips parted in shock. "Press?" I smiled gently. "Transparency, Mom. You taught me to tell the truth, when it's convenient. I'm just doing it when it matters." 2 days later, the conference room was packed, journalists, hospital representatives, and investors. My parents sat stiffly in the second row, their expressions carved in panic. Ethan wasn't there. Apparently, he couldn't handle the stress. The microphones flashed as I stepped onto the podium. "Good morning. I'm Evelyn Reeves, head of operations for the Helios Medical Foundation. Today, I want to address a matter not of money, but of ethics." The cameras clicked. I could feel my parents' eyes burning into my back. "Last month," I continued, "someone canceled a life-saving surgery using falsified documents and redirected the patient's funds for personal use. That patient was me." A gasp rippled through the audience. I let the silence linger before continuing. "The hospital system's digital audit caught the forgery, proving that privilege without accountability breeds corruption, even within families." I paused, then turned slightly, meeting my father's eyes. "This isn't about vengeance. It's about the truth. Because silence only protects the guilty." The reporters exploded with questions. I answered calmly, naming no names, just showing the documents, the timeline, the signatures. The evidence spoke louder than accusation ever could. Afterward, as I stepped down, I caught my father's whisper to my mother. "She destroyed us." I turned back and said quietly, "No, Dad. I freed myself." The story went viral overnight. Commentators praised my composure, my courage. But I didn't care about headlines. I cared that, for once, the narrative belonged to me. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Because the world now saw what kind of people they were and what kind of woman I had become. By Monday morning, the fallout had begun. The hospital board called an emergency session. My parents' names, once symbols of community respect, were now whispered with shame. News outlets replayed my statement, dissecting every sentence. Social media flooded with support. "Stay strong, Evelyn. She's what integrity looks like." But the part that hit hardest came from the hospital director himself. He called me into his office, eyes full of quiet admiration. "Evelyn," he said, "what you did took courage. We're launching a full ethics review, and we'd like you to lead it." For a moment, I couldn't speak. I'd spent years feeling invisible in my family's shadow, and now the very institution they'd used to control me was placing its trust in me. I accepted. That afternoon, I received a message from Ethan. "Ethan, Mom's crying nonstop. Dad won't leave his office. Are you happy now?" I stared at the screen before replying. "Me? I didn't do this to make them suffer. I did it so they'd finally understand suffering." He didn't respond. Later, I received a formal letter, my father's resignation from the board. The same man who once told me, "You're not strong enough for leadership," had been forced to step down under my signature. That night, I sat in my apartment, the same one they'd mocked as temporary. My surgical scar still ached faintly, a reminder of what almost didn't heal. Some wounds fade with time. Others, you learn to wear like armor. And mine? Mine gleamed, proof that betrayal doesn't break you. It builds the version of you they never thought you'd become. 2 weeks later, I got an unexpected call from my mother. Her voice was quiet, stripped of the usual authority. "Evelyn, can we have dinner?" "Just the family." I hesitated, but agreed. There was no anger left, just curiosity. The restaurant they chose was the same one where we'd celebrated my brother's every promotion. When I arrived, the air felt heavy. My father was already seated, staring into his untouched glass of water. My mother looked older, not physically, but in spirit. "Evelyn," she started softly, "we didn't realize how much we'd hurt you." I met her eyes.
"You realized?"
"You just didn't care until the world did." Dad flinched. We were under pressure. "I made bad choices." "No," I said calmly. "You made comfortable ones. At my expense." The waiter brought our food, but no one touched it. Silence filled the space between us, the kind that comes when truth replaces excuses. After a long pause, my father sighed. "We've lost everything: reputation, board seats, respect. But you gained all of it." I folded my hands. "I didn't want you to lose. I just wanted to stop losing myself." For the first time, my mother's eyes welled with tears. "You've become someone stronger than we ever imagined." I smiled faintly. "You mean stronger than you ever allowed me to be."
The check arrived.
My father reached for it, but I stopped him. "Don't worry. I've got it." It wasn't pride. It was closure. For years, they'd paid to control me. Tonight, I paid to end it. A month later, the hospital's annual gala was held, the same kind of glittering event my parents once ruled. This time, I stood at the podium, not as a patient or a daughter, but as the newly appointed director of medical ethics and patient advocacy. Flashbulbs popped. The same reporters who'd once chased my father now turned their cameras toward me. My speech was short, deliberate. "Integrity," I said, "isn't inherited. It's proven when doing the right thing costs you everything." Applause filled the hall. I caught sight of my parents near the back, standing, clapping slowly. My mother's eyes glistened with something between pride and regret. My father looked smaller, but finally human. After the event, I stepped outside into the cool night air. The city lights reflected off the hospital windows like constellations, distant but clear. Julian, the hospital director who had believed in me from the start, joined me quietly. "You did it, Evelyn," he said softly. "You turned pain into purpose." I smiled faintly. It was never about revenge. It was about rewriting the ending. He nodded. "And you did, beautifully." Weeks later, I received a handwritten letter. It was from my father. No excuses this time, just 7 words. "You were always the strong one, Evelyn." I placed it in my desk drawer, beside my old surgical bracelet, the one that once labeled me dependent. Now I was anything but, because sometimes poetic justice isn't loud. It's quiet. It's calm. It's a woman standing on her own 2 feet, while the world finally watches her rise.
I had just signed the biggest deal of my career. The conference room at the Crescent Hotel was still buzzing with handshakes, polite laughter, and flutes of champagne. Someone from the distributors team had patted me on the shoulder and said, "You did good. Delia, real good," but my mind was already elsewhere. I stepped into the hallway, heels clicking on marble, heart still thumping from the adrenaline of negotiation. I thought maybe I'd call my Aunt Edith, the only one who'd ever really asked about my work. Or maybe I'd message my assistant and ask her to book a dinner somewhere quiet. But then I saw the text. It was from my mother. No greeting. No punctuation. Just this. "Give Emery a share of your company and buy him a house. Or don't call yourself part of this family." I stood still in the hallway, phone gripped tight in my hand, my breath caught in my throat, not in sadness but in disbelief. For a moment, I actually waited, expected the next line to say, "Just kidding," or "Let's talk." But nothing followed, just that single brutal sentence. Cold, final, like a wire snapping under pressure. A hotel staffer passed by with a tray of sparkling water. I moved to the edge of the hallway and sat down on a padded bench beside the elevator, staring at the screen. They had meant it. They wanted me after everything to hand over part of the company I built from nothing. Not a conversation, not a request. A demand, an ultimatum, and not just a share. They wanted me to buy him a house too. I felt my fingers go numb, like the blood had drained from them. I had worked myself to the bone for 12 years, building home in Morrow from a second-hand laptop and a folding card table. I had sold soaps at farmers markets, taken red-eyes to trade expos, spent nights on warehouse floors counting inventory. Myself, I had sacrificed birthdays, skipped vacations, missed funerals, and now they'd decided I was useful only as far as I could fund my brother's next chapter. Not congratulations, Delia. Not. We're proud of you. Just give it to him. Or you're out. I should have been angry. I should have deleted the message and gone back into the ballroom to toast my success, but I didn't. I sat there in my crisp suit, heels pinching my toes, and felt something else rise in me. Something slow and deep, like heat under ice. Because this wasn't about money. This wasn't even about family. This was about control. And for the first time in my life, I realized they only loved me when they could use me. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't going to let that happen again. Growing up, I learned early that being the oldest daughter in a Southern family meant two things. You were expected to give without question, and you would always come second to a son who didn't have to earn a thing. My brother Emery is 3 years younger than me. Even as kids, he moved through life like someone had laid down carpet ahead of him. People always said he was charming, that he'd grow into something big. Me, I was the quiet one, the planner, the one who always followed the rules. But the rules were different for us. When Emery got a C on a science test, my mother would pat his shoulder and say, "He's trying his best." When I got an A-, she'd frown and ask, "What happened here? When he forgot his chores?" Dad laughed. Boys will be boys. If I was 10 minutes late from a school event, I got a lecture about reputation and how young ladies ought to behave. And still, I tried to earn their approval. I worked hard. I got a scholarship. I lived at home during college to save money. I took night classes and day jobs. When I started my business in my early 20s, it was out of necessity. I had $800 to my name and a shelf full of handmade lotions. No one believed in it. My mother smiled that tight smile of hers and said, "Just don't get distracted from real work." My father shook his head and muttered something about pipe dreams. And Emery. He laughed and asked if I could make him a lotion that helped with hangovers. Still, I kept going. I said yes to every opportunity. I learned to ship orders out of my garage. I hand-labeled jars. I burned through credit cards and energy drinks. And eventually, it worked. It actually worked. But even then, they never truly saw me. Over the years, they asked for little things, help covering the mortgage when Dad was laid off a new washing machine money for car repairs. I always gave, no strings attached. When Emery changed majors for the 3rd time and needed tuition money, I sent it. When he moved to Austin to chase some startup dream, I helped with rent for 6 months. I told myself I was being generous. That one day they'd notice, but they didn't. They expected. And the worst part, I let them. I let myself believe that if I just kept showing up, kept paying, kept being useful, they'd love me not for what I gave, but for who I was. The text I got that day. It didn't surprise me. Not really. It just made everything I'd been pretending not to see impossible to unsee. Because this wasn't about need. Emery wasn't on the street. He wasn't struggling. He'd just burned through his 4th job in 3 years and told my parents he was ready to finally do something big, and their solution: cut me open and hand him what I built. It wasn't even cruelty. It was casual, like I was a resource they'd been storing for later. I sat in my apartment that night and stared at the ceiling for hours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just kept hearing my mother's voice in my head. "Give it to him or you're out." And for once, I asked myself a different question. Not, why don't they love me? But why have I kept letting them pretend they do? I didn't respond to the message. Not that night. Not the next morning. I didn't tell them how much it hurt. I didn't ask them to reconsider. I didn't try to explain myself or what the company meant to me. or how many nights I'd spent working until my eyes blurred. Instead, I called my lawyer. He'd helped me set up Home and Morrow years ago, back when I was still hand-filling jars and mailing them from a strip mall post office. His name was Harris Bell. Quiet man, wore sweater vests even in summer. Never said more than he had to. When he picked up, I just said, "Harris, I need to tighten the whole structure and I need to do it quietly." He didn't ask why. He just said, "I'll send you a list tonight." Over the next 7 days, we built a firewall around everything I'd created. Ownership was reviewed, voting rights restructured, emergency trustees removed and replaced. I transferred majority assets into a living trust with me as the sole beneficiary. My healthcare proxy and will were rewritten, no mention of family, no fallback heirs. My financial accounts were insulated. My name was the only one on any title. When it was done, Harris looked across the desk and asked one simple question. "Do you want them to know?" I shook my head. "Not yet. I just want to know that they can't touch it." He nodded and handed me the final folder. "Then they won't." I walked home from his office in the fading light of early spring, passing houses with porch lights coming on, parents calling kids inside for dinner, a man watering his roses. Everything looked ordinary, but inside me, something had shifted. For the first time in my life, I had built a wall not to keep myself in, but to keep them out. When I got home, I opened my closet and pulled out a small wooden box I hadn't touched in years. Inside was a folded note from my father written when I graduated college. It said, "You're stubborn, Delia, but you'll go far. Just remember not to burn every bridge." I held it for a long time before placing it back in the box. Some bridges need burning, I thought, especially the ones they keep walking over you on. That night, I typed a letter. Not to my parents, not yet. It was to myself. You don't have to keep proving your worth to people who only see your usefulness. You're not here to fund their comfort. You're not obligated to bleed for those who've never asked if you're still breathing. This isn't abandonment. This is survival. I printed it out and slid it under the glass of my desk right beside the first $42 invoice I ever made. No fanfare, no threats. Just paperwork, signatures, boundaries. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't asking anyone's permission to have it. 3 weeks passed in silence. No messages, no calls, no apologies, just quiet. I didn't expect anything else. The moment I refused the ultimatum, I knew what would follow. Exile wrapped in self-righteousness. They'd rewrite the story in their heads, turn me into the ungrateful daughter who walked away for no reason. They were good at that, making absence look like betrayal when really it was just escape. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, my cousin Jess called. She never called. We hadn't spoken since my grandmother's funeral, and even then it had been small talk in the church parking lot. "Did you hear?" she asked, voice low. "Your mom's throwing a family announcement dinner at the First Baptist Hall." "Saturday night." I paused. "What kind of announcement?" Jess hesitated. "They're introducing Emery's new startup, a supplement brand or something. Your mom says it's a new chapter for the Morrow legacy." I didn't respond. Jess added more carefully this time. "They told people it was a joint venture between the siblings." Of course they did. Even now they wanted to borrow the shine of my name while cutting me out of the photo. "Are you going?" I asked. "I wasn't planning to," she said, then quieter. "But I think you should." I hung up and stared out the window of my office for a long time. Outside, a city bus rumbled past, a couple walked their dog, and the sun dipped low behind the rooftops. They hadn't invited me, but they had used my name. That was enough. I didn't make a scene. I didn't tell anyone I was going. I just took my time. Saturday evening. I parked 2 blocks away and walked in flats carrying a slim black envelope tucked inside my coat pocket. No makeup, no intention of staying long. The First Baptist Fellowship Hall hadn't changed in 20 years. Same chipped linoleum floors, same rows of metal folding chairs. I remembered sitting there as a teenager watching other people get recognized while I stacked plates in the back. Inside, the buffet tables were already half empty, and someone was testing the microphone. Then I saw them. My mother, dressed in cranberry red, holding court near the podium, my father beside her nodding at guests. Emery, of course. Center stage, smiling wide, shaking hands wearing a blazer, a size too expensive. My name was written on a foam board poster propped up beside him. The Morrow Method, a family wellness venture. A lie. A borrowed name. A theft polished to look like legacy. I didn't get angry. I didn't rush forward. I waited. And when the MC began to read the introduction founded by siblings Emery and Delia Morrow, I stepped forward slowly and placed the black envelope on the podium before he could finish. The room hushed. I said nothing. Inside that envelope was a notarized letter from my attorney clarifying trademark ownership, business use rights, and a cease and desist regarding any commercial use of my name or likeness. I met my mother's eyes across the room. She didn't blink. Then I turned and walked out. No raised voice, no accusations, no scene. Just silence. But it was the kind that made people realize something had changed. By the time I reached my car, the first text had already come in. From my father. What the hell was that? Then my brother. You've always had a flair for the dramatic. Hope it was worth it. I didn't answer either of them. Instead, I drove home through quiet streets, the kind you only find on a Saturday night in a town that still believes in family dinners and curfews. I kept the windows down. Let the spring air in. I needed to feel something real after walking through that room full of borrowed pride and polished lies. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt clean, like someone had finally cut the last fraying thread that had been pulling me back for years. The next morning, I woke to a voicemail from my mother. Her voice was calm, too. Calm, Delia, I don't know what point you think you were making, but you embarrassed everyone last night. You embarrassed yourself. Then a pause, and the tone shifted. You've always had trouble being happy for others. That's not new, but to sabotage your brother's chance like that, to humiliate him in front of people, that's something I never thought even you were capable of. I played it twice. Then I deleted it. That same afternoon, Emery posted a long, passive-aggressive message on social media. Sometimes the people closest to you don't want you to succeed. That's okay. That's what lawyers are for. He included a photo of the poster cropped, of course, to hide the envelope I'd placed in front of it, but it didn't matter because word had already spread. An old high school friend messaged me. Hey, I was at that event last night, just wanted to say good for you. Took guts. Then an email from a former vendor. Didn't know that story behind the brand name. Thank you for clarifying. Even my Aunt Edith, who rarely texted more than a happy birthday, sent a message. You didn't owe them silence. Not after all they erased. People started asking questions, especially the ones who'd heard my family's version of the story for years. I didn't post a rebuttal, I didn't release a statement, I simply uploaded one photo. It was taken from behind me, standing in front of Holm & Morrow's flagship store, the sign lit up behind my silhouette. No caption, no explanation. The comments spoke for themselves. That's her store. I thought she just helped. Wait, so she's the founder? By the end of the week, Emery had taken his post down. My parents had stopped calling, but someone else hadn't. My uncle, my dad's older brother, a man who had never once involved himself in family drama. He sent an email short and plain. Delia, I read the original partnership agreement in that envelope. Your name was the only one on it. I'm sorry, I didn't know sooner. That was all. No fanfare, no apology wrapped in excuses. But it landed deeper than anything else that week, because for the first time, someone on the inside had said it plainly. I wasn't overreacting, I wasn't imagining things, I had been erased. And now I had stepped back into the story they tried to write without me. I didn't want Emery's startup to fail. I didn't want to shame my parents. I just wanted the truth to take up space again, to be undeniable, to leave no more room for pretending. It's been 4 months since that night at the church hall. No one in my family has called since. No more voicemails, no messages asking how I am. No holiday invites. No, let's talk this through. Just silence. But for the first time, the quiet doesn't ache. It feels earned, like walking out of a room you were never really welcome in and finally realizing you don't have to keep knocking on a locked door. I've stopped checking their social media. I no longer ask mutual friends for updates. I don't scroll for signs of regret or recognition because I'm not waiting anymore. Last week, I sat across from a young woman, a new hire in our operations team. She asked me how I started the company, and I told her the truth. Not the pretty version, the real one. I told her about the night I slept in my car, about the batch of lotion that spoiled and nearly sank us, about the rejection letters, about the way no one cheered for me until there was something to take. She listened carefully, then asked, Would you do it all again? I thought for a moment I wouldn't change the work I said, but I'd stop begging to be seen. That night, I walked up to the roof of my building, something I used to do when I first moved in. I brought a mug of tea, an old sweater, and a letter. It was the note my father wrote me when I graduated college, the one I'd kept all these years. I read it one more time under the city lights, then I folded it slowly, pressed it flat, and slid it between the pages of a book I no longer planned to keep. The next morning, I mailed the book to their house. No note, no explanation, no return address. Just something to remind them I was never imaginary, that I had always been there, and that I had chosen finally to leave. Not in anger, not in revenge, but in peace. Sometimes the hardest goodbye isn't loud. It's the one where you don't look back. Delia didn't fight to be loved. She chose to stop proving she was worthy of love that had conditions from the start. If you've ever been asked to trade your peace for approval, if you've ever been erased to make someone else more comfortable, then maybe this story wasn't just hers. Tell us below. Have you ever walked away from the people who were supposed to protect you? We're listening. I'm Clara Hale, 32, freelance editor, part-time barista. Full-time disappointment. At least, that's how my family tends to frame it. I come home every Christmas. No matter how busy I am, no matter what it costs, I show up with the wine, the gifts, the soft smile. I sit at the same spot at the same table, like I still belong there, like I'm still part of the Hale family. That's what I thought I was doing this year, too. The house was quiet when I walked in. Not cozy quiet. Wrong quiet. No laughter, no overbaked cinnamon cookies, no Bing Crosby on the dusty stereo. Just the fake tree blinking in the corner and the sound of metal tapping porcelain. I followed it into the kitchen, and there she was. My grandmother Dorothy Hale, 81, in her favorite purple knit sweater, the one with the little snag on the left sleeve she never let me fix. Her hair was up in its usual soft twist, though I could tell she'd done it without help this time. A plate of cold ham and stuffing sat in front of her half-eaten Forgotten. She looked up and smiled when she saw me, the kind of smile you give someone when you're glad they came, but sad they had to. "You're early, sweetheart," she said. Her voice was thin this year. Tired, I set my coat on the chair, careful not to let the door slam. "Where is everybody?" Grandma didn't answer. She just reached across the table with a trembling hand and slid something toward me. It was a torn piece of notebook paper, folded once. No envelope. My name. Clara, written in my mother's handwriting, spent your $8 and $500 loan on the family cruise. Sorry, take care of Grandma while we're gone. Mom. My mother, Elaine, always did have a way of making betrayal sound like a casual favor. I stared at the note. Read it once. Then again, the words blurred around loan and cruise. That money was for my dental surgery. I'd been putting it off for 2 years, worked nights, skipped meals, drove Uber in the snow. I'd finally saved enough. Every dollar mine, and they'd spent it on a vacation. I looked at Grandma. She was holding her orange juice with both hands, now careful not to spill. "I guess they didn't think you'd mind," she said softly. I sat down, slowly. The kitchen chair felt colder than I remembered. "They left you here," I whispered. She didn't answer right away, just folded the napkin on her lap like it was Sunday dinner and we had company coming. Then she looked at me, calm, clear-eyed. "We'll fix this," she said. "That's all." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "Let it go." Just, "We'll fix this." And somehow that broke something in me far deeper than the money ever could. I nodded. Not because I had a plan, but because for the first time in years, I wasn't alone at that table. We sat there for a long time that night. Me, staring at that torn piece of paper like it might change if I stared hard enough. Grandma Dorothy quietly chewing her cold ham like disappointment was just another thing you learn to swallow. I should have said something. But what do you say when your family steals from you and leaves you a person to love as a consolation prize? I took her plate, warmed it up in the microwave, found her a fresh fork. It was such a small thing, but her eyes softened when I handed it back. You always remembered the little things she said. She didn't mean the fork. She meant the 100 other things I'd remembered when no one else did. Like how she liked her tea, steeped 5 full minutes. How her arthritis flared up when it rained. How she still flinched when someone closed a cabinet too hard because Grandpa used to slam things before he left for good. I sat back down across from her, the note still between us. "I don't think they meant to be cruel," I said quietly. Grandma took a long sip of tea and raised an eyebrow. "Oh, honey," she said. "Of course they did. That's the only way they know how to be." It hit me then, not like a punch, but a slow settling. This wasn't the first time they'd chosen themselves. I remembered being 17, sitting on the edge of this same kitchen chair, trying to explain that I hadn't taken the pills from her medicine cabinet, that it was Caleb, our golden boy, who'd stolen them, that he needed help. And I remembered how Mom didn't ask questions. She just packed my bags and told me I couldn't stay if I kept lying. The only person who came out to the driveway that night was Grandma. She wrapped me in her coat, the brown one that smelled like ivory soap, and whispered, "Call me when you land. Don't disappear like your mother did." She was the only one who ever checked in after that, birthdays finals. One winter when I had the flu, she mailed me a wool hat she crocheted herself. It still had 3 loops missing on the rim. I wore it anyway. No one else remembered, but she did. Now she sat across from me, 81, with the same steady eyes. "I guess," I said slowly. "They never really saw us as part of the story." Grandma folded her napkin and looked at me with something almost like pride. "That's because they only write themselves into the ending. But we've been here since page 1. That night, I slept on the old pull-out couch in the den. She brought me an extra blanket, the floral one I always used as a kid, and left a cup of chamomile on the nightstand. Neither of us said goodnight. We didn't need to. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of toast, not the artificial cinnamon sugar kind Mara used to burn in the toaster, but real bread. Rye cut thick, toasted on the pan. The way Grandma always made it when someone was sick or sad, I found her in the kitchen humming something soft. She had her slippers on the wrong feet and her cardigan hung off one shoulder like she'd dressed in a hurry. But her hands moved steady, buttering the toast edge to edge. "I figured you didn't sleep much," she said, not looking up. "You always hated the pull-out." I smiled. "You remember that?" She gave me a look. "I remember you." She slid the plate toward me and then, like it was nothing, placed an old wooden box on the table. Faded, dusty, I hadn't seen it in years. Inside were papers, tax forms, bank statements, envelopes with sticky notes. Grandma reached in and pulled out a small green notebook. Her handwriting filled every page: grocery lists, medication changes, dates, passwords. She flipped to a page labeled 2016, the year they started using me. "This is where we begin," she said. I didn't ask how she knew what I was thinking. She just did. For the next 2 days, we worked like librarians, sorting a crime scene. No drama, just paper pens, reading glasses. She'd squint at something, circle it, and pass it to me. I'd cross-reference it on my laptop, check timestamps, bank routing numbers. We set up shop in the living room. She sat in her old recliner with the cushion that always slid sideways, and I curled up on the floor with an extension cord and a legal pad. There was something oddly holy about it. Quiet, focused, like building a case in the church pews. In between scans and highlighter marks, we talked. She told me about the first time Caleb asked to borrow her debit card just for gas, how it turned into grocery bills, then cash withdrawals. Then, one day, she noticed her pharmacy copay had bounced. "I didn't want to believe it," she said, "but I also didn't want to be the kind of mother who raised children who'd do that. So I told myself maybe it was a mistake." I nodded. "They rely on that." She looked over the rim of her glasses. "They rely on the women in this family having short memories and big hearts. We found proof of cruise deposits, Mara using Dorothy's login from an old shared tablet. A paper trail of emergencies that ended up as Sephora orders and PayPal charges for concert tickets Caleb had been sending himself cash every other Friday from Grandma's pension fund. When we broke for tea, she added a slice of lemon to my cup without asking. "You still like it this way, don't you?" I did. I always had. We didn't say the word revenge, not once, because this wasn't about punishment. It was about truth. And the truth was, they'd left her, left me, not once but in pieces over years. Now we were collecting those pieces. One receipt, one password, one screenshot at a time. By the end of the second night, we had a folder, color-coded, dated, cross-referenced. Dorothy patted it like it was something living. "This isn't justice," she said, "but it's proof. And sometimes, sweetheart, that's enough." They came back on a Sunday. I knew they would. Elaine never missed Sunday dinner, even when she was the one who didn't cook it. She'd want to be seen returning, want to walk in like nothing happened, like Dorothy hadn't been abandoned with a carton of orange juice and a 9-word note. Grandma and I were ready, but not in the way they might have imagined. No shouting, no confrontation. Just a folder on the dining table, my laptop fully charged, and a chair set at the head of the table where Dorothy always used to sit before they started ignoring her. All together, I made tea. Not for them, for us. At 5:47 p.m., headlights swept across the living room wall, a car door slammed, then another laughter outside, high-pitched, effortless. The front door opened like it always had without knocking. Ugh! Mara groaned, dragging her designer suitcase across the entryway. I swear the last night on the ship gave me hives. Too much shellfish, behind her. Elaine walked in with oversized sunglasses still on, even though the sun was already slipping behind the pines. Her perfume hit first floral heavy, the same scent she wore to funerals and fundraisers. Russell followed with his usual grunt, his face red from too many poolside daiquiris. Then Caleb, last as always, dropped his duffel bag in the hallway and headed straight for the couch. No one looked at Grandma. No one said her name. Elaine squinted toward the kitchen. "Did you even clean a little?" she asked, stepping over Dorothy's shawl like it was a pile of old towels. Caleb snorted. "Where's dinner?" "Don't tell me you cooked." Mara sat at the counter, already scrolling through her phone. "I'm starving. Can we do Chinese?" I stood slowly. I hadn't moved until then. I let them walk into their comfort. Let them feel like they still ran the place. "I'm glad you're all here," I said, my voice even. They turned, 4 heads. 4 expressions that all said the same thing. "Oh, you're still here," Elaine sighed. "Clara, let's not do this right now. We just got back." I pulled out the chair at the table, sat down, turned the laptop toward them. "I think we should do it now." I said, "I have something to show you." There was a pause. Caleb rolled his eyes. "Oh God, not this again. Still bitter over your little loan." Dorothy hadn't spoken. She didn't need to. She sat down across from me, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the screen, calm, present. For the first time in years, she looked like the head of the family again. I clicked open the first folder. Label transactions, unauthorized. The room was still. Then the video began. The video wasn't flashy, just a screen recording of a spreadsheet, white background, black text, clean rows, dates, amounts, recipients. Every withdrawal from Grandma's pension account for the past 2 years. Names attached, store locations, timestamps. Elaine leaned in, squinting. "What is this?" I answered without looking at her. "It's where the cruise money came from." Mara laughed, nervous. "You're making this a bigger deal than it is." I clicked on the next tab, a screenshot. Grandma's online banking profile. Logins from a device registered to Mara's email. Transactions made minutes apart from Caleb's Venmo activity. Elaine's voice dropped Clara. Another click. An email exchange from Elaine's account to Mara. I used the pin she left on the fridge. "He won't notice the deposit missing." Mara replied. "He's a softie. Plus, who leaves Grandma alone on Christmas anyway?" The room shrank. I pulled up the audio file. "Hit play." Kelly's voice. Caleb's wife, shaky but clear. "I didn't want to go. I told Caleb it was wrong. But he said if Clara didn't give the money, they'd leave her and deal with it later. He said, 'She always folds.' I couldn't do it anymore. I'm sorry." Caleb bolted upright. "You recorded my wife. That's illegal." "No," I said calmly. "She asked me to. She said she was tired of covering for you, tired of watching you bleed people dry." Elaine's lips thinned. "You little snake, after everything we've done for you." "You mean taken from me," I said. I opened the last window. An email draft addressed to the Social Security Fraud Division, Grandma's elder care attorney, 2 local news desks, and the county ombudsman. Subject: formal report of financial elder abuse. Evidence attached. You have 48 hours. I said, eyes steady to return every cent. The silence after that was alive, a waiting thing. Then Dorothy stood. No anger, just a slowness that made everyone watch. She moved to the head of the table, placed her hand on the chair back like it was once again hers to command. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. I raised 3 of you. I changed your diapers, wiped your noses, paid your school lunches. And when my hips gave out, you left me with frozen carrots in an empty house so you could drink champagne on stolen money. She looked at Elaine, then Caleb, then Mara. You're lucky it's Clara asking for the money. If it were me alone. She let the sentence hang. Russell cleared his throat and left the room. Mara started to cry. Said she didn't know it was that serious. Elaine muttered something about being destroyed by this mess. Caleb stared at me like I'd betrayed him. You're not family anymore, he spat. I smiled. Not cruel. Just free. I know. They didn't believe I would do it. Even after I showed them the email, even after Grandma stared them down with 81 years of quiet memory, they still thought I was bluffing, that I'd fold like I always had. I didn't. 48 hours passed. Nothing moved. Not the money, not a single text. So I sent the email, attachments and timestamps, screenshots, audio names. At 6:13 p.m., I got a response. Case opened. Thank you for your submission. The next morning, it all cracked open. News alerts, missed calls, messages from numbers I didn't save anymore. You didn't have to take it this far. We're family. You're making it worse. I forwarded every message to Natalie Grandma's attorney, a woman with the voice of a librarian and the spine of a federal agent. She didn't flinch. By noon, formal letters went out. Elder abuse, unauthorized withdrawals, financial misrepresentation, the amount owed with interest and fees, $14,322.85. That evening, Elaine showed up at the door. She didn't knock. She stood there in yesterday's makeup and a coat I hadn't seen since 2012. I brought a check, she said, voice raw. $8,500. Don't ask for more. I didn't reach for it. She shoved the envelope into my hand. You're turning your back on your mother, she hissed. I stepped out, closed the door behind me, looked her in the eye and said, No, I'm turning my back on a thief. 2 days later, Mara sent a wire transfer, 4 payments spaced a week apart. Her employer had found the article, the one with the headline, Family Steals Grandmother's Pension Gets Exposed by Eldest Grandchild. Mara's name was in the screenshots, her captions, her emails. She begged me to take the story down. I told her to make the next payment on time. Caleb was last. He posted on social media about toxic siblings and family betrayal, complete with dramatic music. It got 3 likes, then Kelly, his wife, left him. She called me that same night. I'm sorry it took me this long, she said, but watching you do this made me realize I don't have to stay scared. I helped her find a place. No strings. By the end of 2 weeks, every dollar was returned. I used part of it to finally fix my teeth. Bought Dorothy a proper lift chair, paid for a home nurse to check in twice a week. The rest went into a joint account, just our names on it, ours and no one else's. When I showed her the paperwork, she stared at it for a long time. They took everything from me, she whispered. But they didn't take you. We moved out that spring, a small apartment. 1 floor. Quiet, 2 rooms, 1 for her, 1 for me. She called hers the fort. Filled it with old quilts, faded pictures, and the ceramic angel I once gave her when I was 7. We grocery shopped together. She picked out soup cans like they were gemstones. Every time she found a ginger ale on sale, she'd nudge my elbow and say, You always liked this, even when you swore you didn't. One night she knocked on my door, sat slowly on the bed. When you saw the note, she asked, Why didn't you just leave? I thought for a long time. Then I said, Because I remembered who I was before they made me forget. She reached over, touched my hand. Just once, I'm proud of you, she said, not because of the money, because you stayed kind. That broke something soft in me, something that hadn't made a sound in years. They never called again, not on my birthday, not on hers, not even when the article made the state newsletter. But I heard through a cousin that Elaine tried starting a cooking blog. It lasted 2 posts. Mara changed her name on LinkedIn. Caleb's wages were garnished. They were still trying to rewrite the story, but I had the receipts, and the truth was already out there. Sometimes people ask if I regret what I did. I don't. Because that quiet apartment, the way Dorothy hums when she folds laundry, the way we sit at dinner without needing to talk, that's peace. And for the first time in my life, I don't feel like I'm surviving family. I feel like I finally have one. My family banned me from my sister's graduation. Don't even bother showing up. That's what my mother said. Her voice cut through the grainy Zoom connection like cold glass. There was no preamble, no hesitation, just that. As if I were an uninvited guest at someone else's life. It was supposed to be a simple Sunday morning call. I had logged on from my kitchen, coffee in hand, still in my robe. The sunlight filtered through the blinds behind me, golden and warm, but my chest tightened the second I heard her tone. "It's not about you," she added, as if that explained everything. "Chloe deserves a day without distractions." Distractions. That was me. I stared at the screen where our family's faces sat in tiny squares, my mother sharp and upright in her chair, my father barely visible in his Zoom window scrolling through his phone on mute, my cousin Paige with her camera off, and then Chloe, my younger sister, in the center frame, perfectly styled in soft curls and a soft smirk. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Her silence was louder than any words. I felt the heat rising in my face as I placed the mug down on the counter. I tried to speak, but my throat caught. I managed only a slow, steady, "After everything I've done, this is how I find out." My mother scoffed. "We're not doing this. Rachel, Chloe's graduating. It's a celebration, not whatever this is. Whatever this is. This is the thing where I paid for Chloe's tuition for 4 years," I said. "This is the thing where I sent her money for textbooks, housing, even a therapist when she didn't want to go through campus services. This is the thing where you all smiled while I paid, and now I'm an embarrassment." No one interrupted me. No one objected. Not even my father. My Aunt Anne blinked once, then looked down. Chloe was still smiling. It was the kind of smile I knew too well, the kind that says, "I won." That's when I knew it wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment outburst. It was decided, agreed upon, coordinated even. I could have asked why, I could have begged for some explanation, some mercy. But instead, my hand moved to the keyboard. Calm, mechanical. I opened the banking app I hadn't touched since setting up Chloe's automatic tuition plan 3 years ago. The dashboard loaded slowly. My fingers didn't shake. Click, cancel, confirm, done. "Oh, I said my voice even. If that's how you feel, then you'll never see my money again." My mother narrowed her eyes like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. "I mean it," I added. "Credit cards, tuition, grocery money, all of it. You're adults. Time to act like it." And without waiting for a reply, I clicked. Leave. Meeting. The screen went black. My phone buzzed 5 seconds later, a text from my dad. "Don't do anything stupid. She's your sister." Then Chloe. "Thanks for making everything about you again." I turned the phone over on the counter. The coffee in my mug had gone cold. I poured it down the drain and stood there, gripping the edge of the sink, breathing. My hand didn't shake. Not anymore. I wasn't family. I was funding. I wish I could say that Zoom call was the moment things broke. But the truth is, it wasn't a break. It was a conclusion. The unraveling had started years earlier, quietly, steadily, the way a leak behind the wall seeps in until the drywall crumbles. You don't see it happening. You just wake up one day and realize everything you built has rot at the core. It began with a phone call. I was 24, barely a year into my first real job, entry-level at a fintech startup, thrilled to have health insurance and a kitchen with a working dishwasher. "Hi, sweetie," Mom said. Her voice was syrupy. She only used that tone when she needed something. "We're so proud of you, really." "Oh, and Chloe's tuition bill came in. Just until we figure things out. Can you help cover it?" I said yes. Of course, I said yes. That just until became every semester, then housing, then books, then groceries, then mental health weekends in Miami. Chloe never asked directly. She didn't have to. The requests came through Mom or Dad, tucked in phrases like, "You make more than us," or "She's the one with real potential." "Rachel, you should be proud." Proud, I repeated that word a lot, like it might eventually taste right. They called me successful, independent, the sister who had it all together, and so naturally, I was the one who didn't need anything. What they meant was I wasn't their concern, I was their solution. For every emergency, I was the fix. When Chloe wanted to move off campus because the dorms were depressing, I covered first and last month's rent. When her laptop broke, I replaced it. When her boyfriend crashed her car, I helped with the deductible. And through it all, I told myself it was love. That maybe if I gave enough, they'd finally see me. Not just as a wallet, but as family. But they didn't. There were signs. I ignored little bruises I called jokes. Like the Christmas when I gave Chloe a MacBook Air and she wrinkled her nose, I asked for the Pro. This one's kinda basic. Dad laughed. Maybe next year. Mom said nothing. Or the time she left her phone unlocked on the table and I caught a glimpse of a text to Aunt Janet Rachel's such a control freak. Thinks she's Jeff Bezos just because she writes the checks. But hey, if she's dumb enough to keep paying, why complain? I read it 3 times. I told myself it didn't mean what it meant. I was good at rewriting their scripts, but the line I couldn't rewrite came later. It was a rainy Thursday night, close to midnight. I had just climbed into bed when my phone rang. Miss Morgan, the man on the line, said, "We're calling to verify some unusual activity on a card ending in 728. I blinked. I don't use that card anymore. 4 transactions in the last 48 hours, totaling $3,700, Cartier Balenciaga. Foot Locker. That card had been for groceries years ago, one I gave to my mother temporarily. I hung up. My heart didn't race. It sank. That night, I didn't call them. I didn't cry. I sat at my desk, turned on the soft light, and opened my laptop. I went through every account, every forgotten card, every autopay. 3 of them were active, all tied to my name, my social security number, my credit, and their spending. I started making a spreadsheet, not for revenge, for clarity, for proof. Because somewhere deep down, I already knew I had never been a daughter. I had only been the line of credit they could still dial into. I didn't call them. I cleaned the mess. I spent the next 2 days in silence. Not the kind you sit in, but the kind you build, like a barrier. It was the first time I treated what had happened, not as a betrayal to be mourned, but as a crisis to be resolved. I printed statements, opened spreadsheets, changed passwords I hadn't touched in years, called the banks one by one. "Can you confirm who authorized this card?" "Not me. That's my name, but not my purchases." They were polite, efficient. Some asked if I wanted to press charges. I said no. Not yet. I wasn't ready to burn the bridge, but I was ready to shut it down. One card, then another, then a third. All closed. I turned off the grocery stipend I'd set up through my budgeting app. I canceled the tuition autopay. I submitted paperwork to remove Chloe's access to the Amazon account she'd been using under my login. Every click felt like peeling tape from my skin. It hurt less than I expected. There was a moment maybe halfway through when I paused. The apartment was still. My hands hovered over the keyboard. I looked up at the bookshelf by the window where a single potted cactus sat, small, spiky, resilient. I had bought it at a gas station 3 months earlier, half as a joke. Now it stared back like a mirror. I stood up, walked over, and placed a sticky note on the pot. In block letters I wrote, "Boundaries. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I boiled water for tea. I folded the laundry. And somewhere in the middle of all that, I let go of the version of me who kept waiting to be thanked. It wasn't sadness I felt, not anger either. It was something quieter, like finally standing up in a room where you'd been kneeling for years. The texts kept coming. From Mom, "Can we just talk?" From Chloe, "Did the payment not go through?" "Just fix it, Rachel." From Dad, vaguely, "Let's not do anything we can't undo." I read them all. I didn't reply. Instead, I dug out the file I'd once made for Chloe's FAFSA submissions. It still had my W-2s, my co-signer forms, even copies of her student ID. I moved everything into a new folder called Closed. I zipped it, archived it. I wasn't trying to punish them. That was the part people didn't understand. I didn't want them to suffer. I just wanted them to finally live without me, without my name, my number, my safety net. I wanted them to know what it was like to stand on a floor they built themselves. That night, I ordered in, AITA on the couch, watched an old black and white movie with the volume low. Outside, the city shimmered like a place I hadn't noticed in years. I curled under a blanket and told myself just once out loud, "You don't owe them your peace." It felt strange to say it, but it didn't feel wrong. They called a family Zoom I joined with receipts. 3 weeks passed. No phone calls, no apologies, just silence, sharp and deliberate. Then a message, short-clipped. From my mother, family, Zoom tomorrow, 7 p.m., urgent, no context, no warmth, just the kind of invitation that wasn't a question. I stared at the text for a long minute. I almost deleted it, almost blocked her number. But some quiet part of me, the part that used to hope, still wanted to see their faces when I didn't flinch, so I said nothing. I showed up 7:00 p.m. sharp. The screen flickered to life, the same boxes, the same faces. Like nothing had changed. Chloe appeared first, hair curled, lashes done, a hoodie draped over her shoulders like a casual afterthought. She sipped from a Starbucks cup, camera angled just right to show her engagement ring. Mom joined a moment later in her silk robe, sitting straight like a newscaster. Dad's square was dim, the ceiling fan turning slowly above his head. He wasn't looking at the camera. He never did. "Let's begin," Mom said. No greeting. "Chloe's graduation is in 2 weeks. She's walking the stage. You not being there would be a disgrace." I didn't blink. "You told me not to come. I was upset," she replied. "No," Chloe interrupted. "I said it and I meant it. I don't want you there." She leaned back, arms crossed, mouth pursed in that particular way she reserved for retail workers and relatives she found embarrassing, but she added, "I still need the final payment for my capstone course. They won't let me walk unless it clears." There it was. The real reason for the call. Not regret, not repair. Just one last ask. I leaned forward slightly, resting my elbows on the desk. "So let me get this straight," I said. "You don't want me at graduation, but you do want my money." Chloe rolled her eyes. "It's not about you. It's about me finishing college, the college I paid for." I said, voice flat. "Every semester, every book, every ride, every apartment with the hardwood floors and Instagram lighting, every oat milk latte you posted with hashish study grind." "That's enough," Mom snapped. I looked at her. Calm. Still. "You told me I was a distraction, an embarrassment. You told me I didn't belong." She looked away. Dad finally unmuted. "Let's not blow this out of proportion." I gave a short laugh. It wasn't kind. "Oh, this is proportionate," I said. "In fact, I'm about to make it very clear." I reached for my mouse. One click. Share screen. A folder opened on my desktop. Its title. Simple. Receipts inside were PDFs, credit card statements, screenshots of Uber charges, Sephora receipts linked to Chloe's account, and one file marked audio recording MP3. Mom paled. Chloe froze. I didn't press play. "Not yet. I just said, I didn't come here to argue. I came to remind you exactly what you took. This isn't drama. This is theft." The folder sat open on the screen, glowing faintly against the dim light in my apartment. I let the silence stretch just long enough for discomfort to settle in. Mom spoke first. Her voice was clipped brittle. "You recorded us." I didn't answer right away. I wanted them to sit in that question. "You took what wasn't yours," I said instead, "and you laughed while doing it." Chloe broke in with a scoff. "This is so petty, Rachel. Seriously, you're making some slideshow like you're in court." I clicked into one of the PDFs. Highlighted purchases appeared: $4 at Aritzia, $180 on a sushi dinner, a rideshare charge at 2 a.m. from a club I'd never been to, all from the card I gave Mom 5 years ago for groceries, all tied to Chloe's email, her Apple ID. "You always act like you're better than us," Chloe snapped, "just because you work some stupid job and live in that depressing little apartment." "You're right," I said, voice calm. "I do think I'm better than people who steal from their own family and then try to play victim." Her mouth snapped shut. Dad sighed. Okay, we've made some mistakes, but come on, this is family." "No," I said, "this is fraud." Then I clicked play. The recording crackled at first, speakerphone. The quality wasn't great, but the voices were unmistakable. "Chloe, she's not gonna say no. She never does. Mom, she won't even notice. Just keep it under $3,000 or the bank calls." Then laughter, the kind that bubbles up when you think no one's listening. Then Mom again. "We might as well milk her until she finds a husband and stops caring." The recording ended. No one moved. Mom looked as if she'd been slapped. Chloe stared at the floor. Dad rubbed his temples like the weight of the moment was too heavy for him to bear. "You kept all this," Mom whispered. I nodded. "I kept it," I said, "because I knew I just didn't want to believe it." Chloe finally found her voice. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You'll ruin everything, my graduation, my job search." I cut her off. "You ruined it," I said. "You took my name, my credit, my trust, and treated it like a convenience store. And when I asked for a thank you, you called me dramatic." Mom's voice cracked. "You're blowing up the whole family." I looked at her through the camera. "No, you did that when you decided my money mattered more than I did." She tried again, softer now. "You're still our daughter. We can fix this." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "I'm not here to be fixed. I'm here to be done." I stopped the screen share, sat back in my chair. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, the way I'd say it in a budget meeting. "I'm not paying the balance. I'm not showing up to the graduation. I've closed every account in my name. Tuition, rent, Netflix, Spotify, Amazon Prime. Gone." I lifted my phone to the camera, and yes, I added the cards were reported as stolen. The only reason I haven't pressed charges is because I still have enough dignity not to destroy Chloe's career before it starts. That part was true, though less noble than it sounded. I just wanted to leave without needing to burn anything else. Chloe opened her mouth to speak, but stopped. Her face twisted. Anger, guilt, disbelief. She couldn't decide which mask to wear. Mom blinked hard. "You're really doing this?" "I already did," I said. Then I clicked. "Leave meeting." And this time, I didn't wait for the screen to go dark. I didn't ruin her graduation. I ended my role in the lie. The silence after the Zoom call wasn't immediate. It arrived slowly, like fog creeping through a field you thought you knew. 3 days passed without a word. No texts, no missed calls, not even one of Dad's half-hearted just checking in messages. For the first time in years, my phone was quiet. I didn't know if that should have felt peaceful or terrifying, but by the 4th day, the storm arrived precisely as I expected it would. My mother's email came first. The subject line, "You're being cruel." She wrote in paragraphs that read like sermons, accusing me of betrayal, of humiliating the family, of destroying Chloe's future over a petty grudge. My favorite line, "You used to be a good daughter before the world poisoned you with independence." I didn't respond. After that came the cousins, the aunts, a few uncles I barely remembered from holidays past. All of them sent messages that followed the same script. "She's your sister. It's just money. We're disappointed in how you handled this." None of them had messaged me when I paid for Chloe's rent. None said thank you when I kept the mortgage current or covered my parents' grocery deliveries during lockdown. But now suddenly, they all had opinions. I packed my apartment quietly and moved into a new place, still in the same city, just a few blocks over. It had hardwood floors, clean white walls, and a long window ledge where the sun reached in. Each morning, I bought a new plant. A tall, leafy green one that stretched toward the light without asking for permission. I named it Enough. The only message I answered was a text from an unknown number, though I recognized the tone before I even saw the name. I missed the deadline. "I can't walk now. You ruined everything." It was Chloe. No greeting, no acknowledgement, just blame. As always, I stared at the screen, thumb hovering, then replied, "I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped funding your fantasy." Then I blocked the number. A week later, my alma mater called. Someone had attempted to impersonate me to re-enable the tuition plan. They'd forged my signature with a scanned form Chloe must have pulled from an old file. It was flagged. They wanted to verify my identity. I did, of course. I thanked the woman on the phone, then sat in my car and laughed harder than I had in months. Not because it was funny, but because it was ridiculous. Desperate, predictable, and finally done. 2 months later, I saw pictures on social media, Chloe sitting in the audience at her own graduation ceremony in full makeup, pretending not to care. The caption beneath the photo from my aunt read, "Proud of our Chloe. She's a graduate in our eyes, sure, even if the system failed her, or maybe it just finally stopped letting her cheat." The last time anyone from my family reached out was the afternoon my father showed up at my new building. He looked thinner, His voice was softer. "I just want to talk," he said, so I let him in. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, searching the room like he was trying to spot what had changed in me. He didn't speak for a moment, then finally he said, "It's quiet now. Chloe's not doing great. Your mother pretends everything's fine, but it's not." He hesitated. "Can you come back? Just for a meal. Just to talk." I shook my head. "I talked," I said. "For years. You just didn't listen. And now they would have to listen to silence.